It was just another hot Friday afternoon in a small American town where everybody seems to know everybody else's business. You know the kind of place, the one where high school cliques don't really end at graduation, they just evolve into adult versions of themselves. And if you've ever worked a minimum wage job in your teens, you already know how it feels to wear that uniform. The polyester shirt that smells like fryer grease, the hat that never quite fits right, and the look people give you like you're invisible. Or worse, like you're beneath them. That's exactly where this story begins. A teenager, no older than 17, wiping down tables at a fast food joint, doing what he is to do. But what happens next nobody saw coming. Especially not the ones who laughed at him. Because just 3 weeks later, that same teen rolled up to school, not in a used Honda or a busted-up pickup, but in a blood-red Ferrari. And in that moment, the entire town paused. Phones came out, jaws dropped, and suddenly everyone had questions. Now, before we dive in any deeper, let me stop you right here. You probably clicked on this video because something inside you lit up when you saw that headline, "Teen mocked for working fast food job. Then he pulls up in a Ferrari." Maybe you've been there. Maybe someone underestimated you. Or maybe you just love stories where the tables turn, where karma comes full circle. Either way, you're here, and you're not going to want to miss a second of this. Because what if I told you this story isn't just about revenge or luxury cars or proving people wrong? What if I told you it's about something deeper? About grit, humility, and a master plan that not a single soul saw coming. In the next few minutes, everything you thought about that headline will start to shift, and by the end, you'll understand why this teen didn't just win a moment. He changed his entire future. I want you to really imagine this with me. Picture the scene. A local fast food restaurant with blinking fluorescent lights, the kind that hum quietly above as teenagers in aprons and drive-through headsets hustle to keep up with the lunchtime crowd. It's not glamorous. There's no Instagram aesthetic here. Just heat, sweat, and the occasional sound of frozen patties slapping onto the grill. And in the middle of it all, there's a kid named Jaden. Tall, quiet, always working the hardest, rarely talking back, even when customers got snippy or coworkers slacked off. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just doing his job. But let me tell you something people noticed. Not always in a good way. You see, the high school he went to? It wasn't exactly forgiving. You either drove something with a badge on the hood, or you walked. And if you worked at the local fast food joint, you were a punchline. Jaden became that punchline fast. The popular kids, the ones who cruised in with their parents' Range Rovers and BMWs, they laughed behind his back, sometimes even to his face. "Hey, you forget my fries again, Jaden," one of them would shout, walking past him at school. Another would snap fake orders at him like they were at a drive-through speaker. It was nonstop. And through it all, Jaden said nothing. He just kept working. And every now and then, he'd glance at the parking lot, staring at the cars, almost like he was calculating something. Not angry, not bitter, just quiet, focused. Now, here's where things start to shift. Because while everyone else was busy laughing, Jaden was busy learning. What none of them knew was that behind that fryer, between burger flips and drive-through orders, he had a plan. A real one. Not some pipe dream. Not just someday I'll be rich. This was calculated.
Timed.
Precise. And it started with a side hustle. Something he kept hidden from even his closest friends. Something legal, smart, and growing faster than anyone could have guessed. He used every spare second, every break, every night after work, every early morning before school to build it. And in 3 short months, it exploded. But let's pause here because I want you to think about something. Have you ever been underestimated? Like really underestimated? The kind where people don't even bother hiding their smirks because they've already decided who you are and what you'll never become? That's what Jaden faced every single day. And instead of breaking under it, he used it. Like fuel. Like armor. And trust me, that's a skill, one most people never learn. But Jaden did. And that's part of what makes this story so powerful. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, sure. He pulled up in a Ferrari. Maybe his uncle's rich. Maybe he won the lottery. Maybe he's faking it. You'll get those answers. That's a promise. Because this isn't just a one-moment kind of story. It's not just about the car. It's about everything that happened before the engine even started. And the moment it all turned upside down? Well, let's just say it began on a random Thursday when one of those same students who used to mock him decided to make a TikTok about the kid who still smells like French fries. They didn't expect the video to go viral. And they definitely didn't expect what happened next. Because what Jaden did in response, it didn't just silence them. It made the entire school and soon the entire internet stop and stare. This story is about revenge, yes, but not the loud, angry kind. It's about silent revenge. The kind that smiles. The kind that parks a six-figure car next to your dad's lease and doesn't say a word. It's about how you can go from being someone's joke to someone they beg for advice. It's about breaking stereotypes, proving value, and reminding everyone that no matter where you start, it's where you finish that counts. But the best part? Jaden didn't do it for clout. He didn't do it for followers. He did it for something else entirely, something that, by the end of this video, will hit you deeper than you expect. So buckle up. Because this ride, it's just getting started. And the best part, the real twist, is still up ahead. Jaden wasn't the kind of kid who stood out in a crowd, not at first glance. He didn't wear flashy clothes or post shirtless mirror selfies on Instagram like half the football team. He wasn't loud, didn't chase attention, and definitely didn't throw money around, mostly because he didn't have any. At least, not yet. But if you paid close enough attention, you'd notice something different about him. It was in the way he carried himself, head down, earbuds in, always observing. Not zoning out, but watching. Listening. Almost like he was studying the world around him, figuring out where he fit into it, or maybe how he'd eventually outgrow it entirely. People assumed he was shy, maybe even a little weird. But Jaden wasn't shy. He was calculating. And while his classmates were busy chasing clout on TikTok and scrolling through sneaker drops they couldn't afford, Jaden was building something behind the scenes that would flip the whole school's perception of him on its head. A few months before the Ferrari incident, Jaden's life looked like any other teenager grinding through high school while juggling a minimum wage job. He worked long hours at the fast food joint on the edge of town, usually closing shifts, the ones nobody wanted.
He didn't complain.
Never showed up late. Never asked for time off. His coworkers thought he was just a quiet, dependable guy. His manager liked him enough to start giving him extra hours, and Jaden took every single one. But here's the thing. He wasn't doing it just for the paycheck. He had a plan. He'd been quietly studying online businesses in between cleaning tables and taking drive-through orders. He watched tutorials during his lunch breaks, stayed up late analyzing e-commerce trends, and followed YouTube channels about flipping electronics and dropshipping products. And then, without telling anyone, he launched a store. Not some amateur setup either. Jaden taught himself how to build a legit Shopify site, ran targeted Facebook ads, tracked analytics, and reinvested every single dollar he earned. While his classmates wasted money on gas station vapes and overpriced shoes, Jaden turned his tips and paychecks into capital. And the craziest part? His business actually worked. But what kind of high school kid builds a profitable online brand out of nowhere? That's what people started asking once the Ferrari showed up. And just like that, the rumors exploded. Some said Jaden got lucky with crypto. Others swore he had a secret YouTube channel that blew up overnight. There was even a theory that he had a wealthy godfather who dropped cash on him as a graduation gift. Nobody knew the truth, and Jaden wasn't about to tell them. At least, not yet. The mystery made it even worse for the ones who used to mock him, because now, he wasn't just the kid who worked the fryer. He was an enigma. A story people told in whispers between classes. And as the gossip grew louder, Jaden stayed silent, letting the tension build while he carefully chose who to keep close and who to keep guessing. It didn't help that Jaden's relationships with others at school were complicated. He had a few people he was cool with, friends who'd known him since childhood and didn't treat him any differently just because he wore a work uniform after class. But even among them, there was a strange shift once the Ferrari moment went viral. Some of his closest friends started acting different. One buddy, Marcus, who used to hit him up every weekend to hang out, suddenly started asking weird questions. How much money Jaden was really making, whether he could invest in his business, or if Jaden could help him start something too. Another friend, Tori, who had always supported him quietly from the sidelines, stopped replying to his texts altogether. Some people began drifting away. Others started coming around for the wrong reasons. Then there was Bryce, a name that kept coming up over and over again once people started putting pieces together. Bryce was one of the loudest guys in school, the type who always needed to be the center of attention. Captain of the lacrosse team. Always filmed himself doing stunts or pranks and tagged local influencers for clout. He used to tease Jaden more than anyone else, calling him Grease Boy, in front of crowds and dropping fake applications off at the fast food joint as a joke. But after Jaden's Ferrari moment, something shifted in Bryce. He wasn't just surprised, he was angry. Suddenly, he started talking about how something didn't add up and how Jaden must have done something shady to get all that money. He even pulled out screenshots from Jaden's old posts and tried to claim he was faking his success with rented cars and fake flexes. The drama only grew when one of Jaden's e-commerce competitors from another high school started tagging him in cryptic Instagram stories, implying that Jaden might have stolen product listings or used shady suppliers. It was vague, almost too convenient, and felt more like jealousy than anything real. But the damage was done. Rumors spread fast, and soon people started to wonder, was Jaden really a genius, or was he just a scammer who got lucky? The whispers started to eat away at his clean image. His silence, once mysterious, now felt suspicious to some. But here's what made everything more intense. Jaden never reacted. Not once. He never posted a rebuttal. Never called anyone out. Never even mentioned the drama. Even when Bryce uploaded a TikTok mocking him again, claiming Jaden's Ferrari was probably rented by the hour. Jaden just kept doing what he was doing. Quiet, composed, and still driving that same Ferrari to school every day like nothing was wrong. And that silence? That's what made people obsessed. Because in a world where everyone overshares everything, Jaden's refusal to explain himself drove people insane. They wanted answers. Desperately. And that desperation only got worse when someone leaked a video clip, just a few seconds long, of Jaden handing over a thick envelope of cash to a man in a hoodie behind the fast food restaurant after closing hours. No context. No explanation. Just grainy footage, shot from behind a dumpster, that showed Jaden handing off what looked like thousands of dollars in cash. The clip was uploaded to Snapchat first, then Reddit, then YouTube. And the theories? They went wild. People said he was laundering money. Others said he was involved in something illegal. Some even claimed he was being blackmailed. The video became a local sensation overnight, even making its way to a trending YouTube Shorts compilation titled Rich Teens with Shady Secrets. But the truth? Well, that's where the real story begins. And if you think you know what's coming next, you don't. Because Jaden's not who you think he is. And that guy in the hoodie? He's not who you think he is either. What if the clip was staged? Or worse, what if someone wanted to frame him? There's a reason Jaden stayed quiet. A reason he never defended himself. And the moment you learn what it is, everything else, every rumor, every insult, every smug laugh he swallowed, will make perfect sense. But before we get there, you need to know about one more thing. A girl named Lena. And what she knew changed everything. Lena wasn't someone most people paid attention to, at least not at first glance. She kept to herself, usually wore hoodies 2 sizes too big, and had a reputation for knowing a little too much about everyone. Some called her a loner, others said she was just off, but Jaden had known her since middle school, back when they were both the quiet ones in class who partnered up for science fair projects because nobody else picked them. While they drifted apart over the years, Jaden never forgot that Lena noticed things other people didn't. She didn't just observe, she archived. Photos, screenshots, recordings. Lena kept receipts on everyone, not because she wanted to expose them, but because she never fully trusted anyone. She was smart, skeptical, and way more connected than she let on. So when she reached out to Jaden after the video leak, her message was simple and sharp. We need to talk. You're being set up. Jaden didn't know what to believe at first. The footage of him handing off the envelope was real, but the context was twisted. What he handed over wasn't dirty money. It was cash for a bulk electronics deal he'd been working on for weeks, buying inventory from a warehouse liquidator who only dealt in physical cash for tax reasons.
Shady?
Maybe. Illegal? Not even close. But that didn't matter once the narrative took off. All it took was a few blurred frames and a couple of Reddit threads, and suddenly Jaden was a suspect in his own success story. He needed to find the original video, the raw file, to prove it had been edited. But when he tried to track it down, the source was gone. The user who uploaded it had wiped their account completely. Every digital trail led to a dead end.
It was like someone had planned it that way.
Lena wasn't surprised. She told Jaden something he didn't want to hear. This wasn't random. Someone was trying to burn his reputation before it got too big to touch. And the craziest part? She thought it wasn't just one person. She believed it was a group. A small one, but powerful, connected, and threatened by what Jaden had built. According to Lena, there was a Discord server run by some of the more popular kids at school, people like Bryce, where they joked about ruining people's lives for fun. Leaking fake DMs, spreading false rumors, even impersonating accounts to post incriminating stuff. Lena had infiltrated the server once under a fake profile. What she found there wasn't just petty high school drama, it was organized chaos. But when she went to pull the screenshots she had saved, her drive had been wiped clean. Files gone. Every backup corrupted. Her tech was locked out overnight. She hadn't told anyone, not even Jaden, because she thought she was just being paranoid. But now she wasn't so sure. Jaden started to feel like he was being watched. People he barely knew were suddenly asking strange questions about his business. A substitute teacher he'd never spoken to before made a snide remark during class about fast cars and fast lies. Even his shift schedule at work started changing without explanation, almost like someone was trying to throw him off balance. One night, while leaving the restaurant after a late close, Jaden noticed his tires had been slashed. No note. No witnesses. Just silence and 4 flat tires in a dark parking lot. That was the first time he considered whether this went deeper than school rivalry or jealousy. Maybe someone outside of school didn't want him to succeed. Maybe someone he trusted was feeding information to the wrong people. Then there was the envelope. Jaden found it in his locker 2 days later. No name. No handwriting. Just a plain white envelope with one thing inside. A photo. It was a picture of Jaden and Lena standing near the back of the fast food place from weeks ago, the same night the viral video had been shot. The angle was different, though. Higher up, as if it was taken from a rooftop or a drone. There was also a timestamp and one line scrawled across the back of the photo in red marker. Keep digging and you'll lose more than your car. Jaden froze. It wasn't the message that scared him most. It was the fact that someone had been watching, documenting everything, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This wasn't some random act of bullying. It was planned. And the deeper he looked, the darker it all became. Then Lena dropped something he wasn't ready for. She'd been reviewing metadata from a backup server she kept at her uncle's place, a place she thought nobody knew about, and she found something strange. A hidden folder, buried deep in her recovered files, labeled with a name that didn't make sense at first. Winterlight. Inside were logs of transactions, usernames, and IP traces that linked back not just to Bryce, but to someone else. Someone Jaden had trusted. Someone who had helped him get started with his business in the first place. Someone who knew all his passwords, his suppliers, and how he operated. It was someone he called a friend. Jaden stared at the screen in disbelief. There it was, his name, next to transactions he never made, withdrawals from accounts he never opened, tied to orders that had never been shipped. It was as if someone had cloned his operation, replicated it with just enough variation to avoid detection, and started using it against him from the inside out. Lena looked at him and said the one thing he hadn't even considered until now. You've been betrayed. And it's not just business. They want to erase you. But before they could figure out their next move, Lena's phone lit up with an alert. Her server access was revoked. Her devices all pinged with login attempts from multiple locations across the country. Then her screen went black.
Locked.
Just one message burned across it in bold red letters before it shut down completely. This is your final warning. Jaden sat there, stunned, his heart pounding so loud it felt like it echoed through the room. The silence that followed was worse than the message itself. Because now, they weren't just up against classmates or haters. They were up against something bigger. Something coordinated. And maybe, just maybe, it had been there all along, hiding behind the fake smiles and casual jokes. And the person who started it all? The one who planted the first seed of sabotage? They were closer than Jaden ever imagined. Just when Jaden thought things couldn't spiral any deeper, his phone buzzed again, this time, not from Lena. It was a message from his younger brother, Marcus. The two didn't always get along. Marcus was just 15, more into gaming and streaming than real-life drama. But his text hit like a freight train. Yo, did you post something weird about me online? I'm getting flamed in my DMs. Jaden's stomach dropped. He hadn't posted anything, of course, but he knew immediately this wasn't random. Marcus sent a screenshot right after. It was a fake tweet with Jaden's handle, complete with his profile pic and the blue checkmark he'd earned just last month, claiming Marcus had been caught cheating on a school test and that he didn't deserve a second chance. The comments were brutal, and worse, some of Marcus's teachers had seen it. Jaden was stunned, not just because it was fake, but because whoever was behind this knew exactly how to hit him where it hurt most, through his family. At first, Jaden figured this was just another attempt to rattle him, a new angle to throw him off course. But then Lena called again, her voice panicked. They're expanding. Whoever this is, they're not just trying to cancel you anymore. They're trying to cut you off from everyone you care about. Lena had done more digging through what little remained of her backup logs and found references to another name buried in some of the deleted files. Phase 2. It sounded like a game plan, like this entire takedown was being executed in deliberate stages. She didn't know what Phase 2 fully entailed, but it was clear now that anyone remotely linked to Jaden was being pulled into the fire. Then came the unexpected twist. Jaden's old coworker, Lexi, messaged him out of nowhere. She had transferred to another branch 3 months ago and hadn't talked to him since, but her message was cryptic. We need to meet. I saw something I wasn't supposed to. Lexi had always been observant and a little paranoid. She used to joke about covering the webcam on her laptop and never connecting to public Wi-Fi, calling it basic survival in a digital age. When they met up in a quiet corner of the public library parking lot, far from cameras and cell reception, she looked shaken. She said she'd been helping manage inventory for the new branch and had noticed that several items Jaden had once ordered for his online store were showing up on their shipment manifests, even though Jaden never ordered through the company directly. Worse, the orders were being billed to a vendor ID registered under a fake company name, one eerily close to Jaden's actual LLC. Lexi believed someone was laundering stolen stock through his old workplace, using it to frame him or fund something much bigger. She didn't know who, but she had managed to copy one shipping manifest and snag a single barcode scan before everything vanished from her system. The paperwork, the emails, the digital trail, all wiped clean the next morning. Her manager even warned her not to go snooping around again, saying it wasn't worth losing a job over someone else's mess. The barcode she scanned? It linked to a warehouse in Nevada, one with no website, no reviews, and no listed owners. Just a name. Meridian Storage Group. Jaden and Lena began piecing it all together, and that's when the real paranoia started to sink in. What if this wasn't just about high school grudges or social sabotage? What if his sudden rise in success had made him a target for something more sinister, something that had been watching from the sidelines, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? Lena said it herself. This isn't just about what you did. It's about what you represent. A kid from nothing making real money? That messes with people's power. And maybe, just maybe, someone in power didn't like that at all. But it got even more twisted. Lena managed to recover a single frame from an old surveillance file, a glitchy, pixelated image from outside the restaurant 2 months ago, showing someone slipping a USB drive into Jaden's backpack while he worked the grill station. At the time, he was too busy to notice anyone come that close. The person was wearing a hood and gloves, their face turned from the camera, but Lena enhanced the image just enough to make out one terrifying detail. The person had a small tattoo behind their ear, a black triangle inside a circle. Lena had seen it once before. on the wrist of Bryce's cousin Logan, who had been expelled last year for hacking into the school's gradebook system. It wasn't a common symbol, and the only place Lena had ever seen it online was in deep web forums linked to a group called The Sink, a name she had once dismissed as urban legend. Jaden didn't know what to believe anymore. Every new discovery seemed to contradict the last. People he thought were enemies might be victims. People he trusted might be involved. And just when he thought they were getting closer to the truth, Lexi disappeared. Not in the dramatic, vanished without a trace way, but she stopped answering her phone, her social accounts went dark, and when Jaden went back to her branch to find her, the manager said she had quit suddenly and left no forwarding info. Her locker was empty. Her file deleted. It was like she never worked there. Now, Jaden wasn't just fighting to protect his reputation. He was fighting to hold on to the people around him and to find out whether his life had been manipulated from the very beginning. Every new clue opened another door, another question, another reason to keep going. But also another shadow hanging overhead. The story wasn't about a teen pulling up in a Ferrari anymore. That car, that symbol of triumph, might have been the bait all along. A distraction. A target painted on his back from the moment he leveled up. And just as he started to connect the dots, a new message popped up on his phone. No sender. No number. Just 5 words blinking on his lock screen. You were never in control. The weight of those 5 words, you were never in control, clung to Jaden like cold iron shackles, dragging him deeper into a storm he hadn't seen coming. He stared at his phone screen for a long time, long after the message faded and his lock screen returned to normal. There was no number, no trace in his call log, and not even a notification in his messaging apps. It was as if the phone had whispered the threat directly into his thoughts. That night, sleep was a stranger. He stayed up, pacing, checking the windows, unplugging every smart device in his apartment. Even Lena's voice over the phone couldn't soothe the growing dread creeping under his skin. The shadows in the corners of his room felt alive, the silence between street sounds somehow heavier. His thoughts spun like loose wheels, and for the first time, he truly understood what it meant to not feel safe in your own skin. The next day, things got worse. Not gradually, not with a subtle shift, but like a switch was flipped. Jaden noticed a car parked across the street from his building. It was there when he left to grab coffee. It was there when he returned. And it was still there hours later, when he took out the trash. A matte black sedan, windows tinted so dark you couldn't see a shadow inside. At first, he tried to brush it off. Maybe someone's friend was visiting. Maybe it was a rideshare on standby. But by the 3rd day, when the same car started tailing him 2 blocks behind wherever he went, the panic became real. Jaden changed his routes, took unexpected turns, even doubled back to see if it would follow, and every time, the same quiet menace trailed him like a ghost. It wasn't fast. It didn't flash lights or roll down windows. It just hovered, watching, waiting. He tried to talk to the police, but it was useless. Without a license plate or clear footage, they said there wasn't much they could do. It could be a coincidence, the officer had said, half listening while checking his phone. Happens all the time. People get paranoid. But Jaden wasn't paranoid.
He knew what he saw. He knew what he felt.
And that feeling only worsened when he called Lena the next morning, and her phone went straight to voicemail. Not once, not twice, but every call for the next 8 hours. Her social media accounts were locked. Her backup number rang once, and then cut off. No messages, no alerts. Just silence. Jaden drove to her apartment building across town, his heart racing with every red light. But when he got there, her landlord claimed she had moved out that morning. Left no forwarding address. Said it was personal, he added, uninterested. Her unit was empty, the door ajar, furniture gone. Jaden stepped inside and felt the hollowness like a punch to the chest. Lena was methodical. She didn't make sudden decisions. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Then came the package. It was sitting on his kitchen counter when he returned. No knock, no delivery notice, no security cam footage. A small box, plain cardboard, no sender. Inside it, a single object, the same USB drive Lena had once described in her recovered footage. Jaden felt his hands shaking as he turned it over. There was no label, no markings, just an eerie sense that plugging it in would unleash something he couldn't walk back. He took it to an old laptop, one that hadn't touched Wi-Fi in years. Isolated. Secure. When he opened the drive, there was just one file inside. A video. It was grainy, recorded from a high vantage point, maybe a drone or a security cam, and it showed Jaden leaving work one night 2 months ago. The same night his online store was hacked. But the video didn't just show him. It showed another figure in the shadows, following him from a distance, mimicking his steps like a shadow puppet. And as Jaden paused the frame and zoomed in, his stomach twisted. The figure was wearing his old work uniform, down to the same grease-stained name patch. And when the figure looked up, the light hit their face just enough to show something horrifying. It was his own face. Or something wearing it. Jaden staggered back from the laptop, eyes wide, lungs refusing to breathe. His mind screamed for a logical explanation. Deepfake, prank, old footage manipulated by AI. But none of it explained the car, the missing friends, the messages, the disappearance of people tied to him. None of it explained why someone would go to such lengths just to mentally dismantle a teenager who worked the Friar Station 2 years ago. Unless it wasn't about the past. Maybe it was about what he could become. Maybe someone was trying to rewrite his story before he ever finished telling it. His mind reeled with questions, but answers slipped further out of reach. Was Lena really missing, or was she being used against him? Was Lexi's discovery about the shipping records just a setup to lure him into a trap? And what about Marcus? Was his involvement accidental? Or was he another pawn in a game Jaden never agreed to play? Every detail now felt poisoned. Every memory suspect. He even began questioning whether the Ferrari, the ultimate symbol of his hard-earned success, had ever truly belonged to him. What if it was part of the trap all along? A shiny object dropped into his world just to make him stand out, just to make him a target? With every breath, Jaden felt the walls close in. His mind was unraveling, logic bending under the weight of impossible questions. And just when he thought he'd hit his limit, the power went out.
His phone died.
Every light in the apartment flickered once, and then faded to black. Silence swallowed the room, until, from the hallway just outside his door, came the unmistakable creak of a floorboard being stepped on. The darkness wasn't empty anymore. Jaden's breath caught in his throat as the hallway floor groaned again. Slow, deliberate pressure, the kind that didn't belong to someone passing by. His heart pounded like it was trying to break through his chest. He backed up slowly, hands stretched out to feel his way through the dark. With each step, the silence grew heavier, like it was holding its breath with him. Then came the sound that shattered everything. A quiet knock, not on the front door, but on the inside wall of his apartment. Just one knock. Then two. Then silence. Jaden froze, trying to make sense of it. His head turned instinctively to the kitchen wall where the knock had come from. That wall shared a divider with a neighboring unit, which had been vacant for months. Or so he thought. Before he could move, the power flickered back to life. Light snapped on, the fridge hummed again, his phone buzzed back with low battery. Everything looked normal until he turned toward his front door. There, taped to the center of it, was a single Polaroid photo. The edges were curled, like it had been sitting in someone's pocket for too long. Jaden slowly peeled it off, and as he held it up to the light, his world tilted on its axis. It was a photo of him, standing in his high school parking lot, wearing the fast food uniform. He remembered that day. It was one of the worst. The day after a group of seniors had filmed him taking out trash behind the restaurant and posted it online with the caption, "Loser of the Month." He'd been humiliated, mocked. But in this photo, taken from the same angle, the background revealed something different. In the far corner of the frame was a man leaning against a black sedan. The same black car that had been following him. But what made Jaden's knees nearly give out was the man's face. He knew that face. It was the same as his father's. Jaden's father had died in a car accident when Jaden was 9. At least, that's what he'd always been told. The funeral had been closed casket. His mom never spoke about it. Anytime Jaden asked questions, she changed the subject. But here he was, in a photo taken only 2 years ago, older, tired, very much alive. Jaden sank onto the couch, clutching the photo with trembling fingers, every memory spinning in reverse. Had the whole thing been a lie? If his dad was alive, why had he disappeared? Why the games, the threats, the manipulation? Then came the call. Not a number he recognized, but something deep inside told him to answer. He pressed the screen with hesitant fingers. There was a pause. Then a voice, calm, deep, familiar. "You were never in danger, Jaden," the man said. "You were being tested." Jaden's voice cracked. "Who are you?" But the man didn't answer that. He said something else instead. "What you've been chasing was never the truth. It was your conditioning. We needed to see how far you'd go to fight back. And now we know." The line went dead. Jaden stared at the screen, stunned. The words barely made sense. Conditioning? Testing? Was this some psychological experiment? His phone buzzed again. Another video. This one was older, grainy VHS footage, clearly from the late 90s. It showed a group of young adults sitting in what looked like a training facility. Among them was his mother, much younger, looking sharp and intense, and beside her sat the man from the photo, his father. Behind them, a whiteboard scrawled with words Jaden couldn't fully make out, but one line stood out in red ink: Legacy Initiation. Phase 1. Jaden's entire reality began to fracture. His father didn't die in a crash. His mother had been part of something secret. And now he was somehow part of it, too. The job at the fast food place, the viral humiliation, the sudden success of his online store, the Ferrari. It wasn't luck. It wasn't hard work. It was designed. Every failure, every win, every person placed in his path, Lexi, Lena, even Marcus, had likely been part of the same long game. Nothing had ever been random. The air grew colder as his thoughts spiraled deeper. Why him? Why this test? Was he supposed to follow in their footsteps? And what did that even mean? He wasn't special. He was just a kid who got mocked for flipping burgers. And yet, someone had spent years building a world around him, watching him, shaping him. And if his instincts were right, the people behind it were not finished. But the worst part was still coming. Jaden opened his laptop again, digging into metadata from the photo, searching for GPS coordinates, file origins, anything. When he finally cracked it, a set of coordinates pinged on the map. It was a facility 2 states away, listed as decommissioned government property. But the attached file, one he hadn't seen before, was labeled Phase 2. And at the top, in bold red letters, it read, Subject Jaden Torres, activation pending. He wasn't just being tested. He was being prepared. Jaden sat frozen at his desk, the chilling phrase, activation pending, burning into his mind. The room felt smaller now, the walls almost pulsing with the weight of everything he had just uncovered. He thought about deleting the file, slamming his laptop shut, forgetting the coordinates. He could pretend none of it had happened. Go back to working shifts, focus on school, forget the Ferrari, the threats, the whispers. But something deep inside him wouldn't allow that. There was too much to ignore now. His life had been steered like a car on autopilot, and now that he'd finally grabbed the wheel, he wasn't sure he even knew how to drive it anymore. But he needed answers. Not just for himself, but for the truth of who his father really was, why his mother had kept all of this hidden, and what activation meant. The stakes weren't just high now, they were personal. He didn't have to wait long for the next blow. Later that night, Jaden confronted his mother. It was the first time he had ever looked at her not just as a parent, but as a potential player in something much, much bigger. She was in the kitchen, humming quietly as she poured tea like it was just another ordinary evening. Jaden stood in the doorway, fists clenched at his sides, the Polaroid photo crumpled in his hand. He asked her directly, voice shaking, "Why did you lie to me about Dad?" She paused for just a second, barely noticeable, but in that moment he knew. She wasn't surprised by the question. She didn't ask what he meant. She didn't even look confused. Her face just fell, like a mask slowly sliding off, and for the first time in his life, Jaden saw fear in his mother's eyes. Not fear for him, fear of him. She motioned for him to sit down, but he didn't. He needed the truth standing up. She sighed and said quietly, "You were never supposed to find out on your own. We had plans. Timelines. You weren't ready." Her words hit harder than any punch he'd ever taken. "Ready for what?" he demanded. She finally looked up, voice trembling. "To choose." That word echoed in his head like thunder. She told him that everything in their lives, from the places they lived, the jobs they took, the people who came and went, was part of a long-standing, off-the-record government program called the Legacy Directive. She said it had started after a series of intelligence failures, where operatives were recruited too late in life. So they changed the model. Children were chosen early, raised in simulated environments designed to test their morals, decisions, and loyalty, without them even knowing it. Jaden was one of them. He felt sick. Every friend, every heartbreak, every moment of joy or pain, it might have all been a test. But she wasn't finished. She handed him a sealed envelope that had been hidden behind the fridge, buried in the wall. Inside was a document marked with an official-looking seal and one sentence in bold: "You have 48 hours to accept or reject your legacy. After that, your access will be revoked permanently." Attached was a single keycard and a plane ticket to a city he'd never heard of, no return flight. His mother said she had taken the deal years ago, but when his father wanted out, they staged his death to protect them both. He had stayed involved secretly, monitoring Jaden's development, ensuring he didn't break under pressure. But now, for the first time, the agency was giving Jaden a choice. Jaden didn't know whether to scream or collapse. His whole life had been a manipulation. Every decision he thought was his own had been part of a larger pattern, coded and tracked like some human algorithm. And now they wanted him to willingly step into the program? What if he refused? Would they wipe his memory? Eliminate him? Or worse, go after the few people he still trusted? That's when he thought of Lena. She hadn't returned his texts all day. Panic surged through him. He called, no answer. He called again, and this time it rang once before going straight to voicemail. He checked her location, nothing. She had vanished. Just as he was about to run out the door, his phone buzzed with an anonymous message. A photo of Lena, tied to a chair, blindfolded, with the words written across the screen. "You have 24 hours. Choose wisely." Jaden's knees buckled as reality closed in on him like a steel trap. This wasn't just about him anymore. They were dragging in innocent people, or maybe Lena wasn't innocent either. What if this was just another test? Another layer of manipulation? Another red herring? His mind spun with paranoia. Was Marcus in on it too? Was the Ferrari a gift? Or bait? Who could he trust? He had 24 hours. A ticking clock. A choice that could define not just his future, but everyone connected to him. But deep down, Jaden knew something else too. There was more to this than what his mother had told him. Much more. And if Lena was truly in danger, or playing a role he hadn't yet understood, then he needed to stop reacting and start playing the game on his terms. Because now it was war. And Jaden had just realized the battlefield was bigger than he ever imagined. Jaden barely had time to think. Every second felt like it was dripping acid into his veins. The message on his phone, the image of Lena tied and blindfolded, had shattered what little sense of control he had left. His mind raced as he ran through the empty streets, headlights blurring past like ghosts, the city suddenly colder, unfamiliar, like it was watching him. He knew one thing for sure. He couldn't go to the police. If what his mother told him was true, then the very people sworn to protect might already be part of the system. The Legacy Directive wasn't just a rogue experiment. It had roots in places most people never dared to imagine. It was buried so deep, even its name didn't show up on government databases. And now, he was staring down a clock that was set to explode. His destination was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, coordinates that had been buried in the metadata of the original activation file. It wasn't just a random location. This place had history. His father had taken him here once when he was 9 years old. Back then, it was just an empty lot with broken windows and rotting beams. Now, it was lit from within, humming with electricity, cameras tracking his every move before he even stepped through the rusted door. He expected resistance, guards maybe, But instead, a familiar face stepped out of the shadows. Marcus. Jaden's heart sank. "What the hell are you doing here?" he asked, his voice ragged from running and betrayal. Marcus smiled, calm, composed, too calm. "I've been here the whole time, man. You just didn't want to see it." That's when it all clicked. The sudden Ferrari offer, the casual access to money, the way Marcus always knew things before Jaden told him. He wasn't just a friend, he was a handler. The betrayal was sharp enough to draw blood. Marcus continued, "They knew you'd never make the jump unless you felt cornered. It had to feel real. You had to believe you were in control." Jaden wanted to punch him. He wanted to scream. But more than anything, he wanted answers. "Where's Lena?" Marcus turned slightly, gesturing to a screen behind him. Live video feed. Lena still tied up, but now it was clear. The room she was in, it wasn't a warehouse.
It was a lab.
And not just any lab, one Jaden had seen once in a photo buried in his father's old flash drive. His blood ran cold. This wasn't a kidnapping. It was containment. They weren't punishing Lena, they were activating her. Marcus spoke again, his tone eerily calm. "You thought this was about you, Jaden. But you're just one piece. Lena was activated months ago. You were the final test, to see if she'd betray the program for you." Jaden shook his head in disbelief, watching her on the screen as wires were attached to her temples, her mouth opening in a silent scream.
No.
She wouldn't do this. She wouldn't fake all of it. But Marcus stepped closer, voice low. "People lie, Jaden.
People change.
And when they don't, we help them." The words felt like a knife twisting deeper. Jaden's reality had been shredded. He realized now that his story wasn't an exception. It was a pattern. All across the country, people like him were being groomed, tested, broken, and built again. It wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a silent war. A recruitment strategy that had gone far beyond military training. It was psychological warfare, sculpted over lifetimes, disguised as bad luck, missed opportunities, second chances. Lena was never just his friend. She was his mirror. And now she was breaking. Suddenly, the feed cut out. The screen went black. Alarms flared throughout the warehouse. Marcus pulled out his phone, frowning. This wasn't supposed to happen. Jaden saw the shift in his body language, control slipping. Fear creeping in. He backed away, scanning the warehouse. "What did you do?" Marcus growled. Jaden didn't answer. He couldn't. Because he didn't know. He hadn't planned anything. But someone else had. That's when the emergency lights kicked on, flooding the warehouse with crimson light. A voice echoed over the intercom. Distorted, masked. "You've activated the wrong protocol." He was never meant to survive this long. The lights flickered. Gunfire erupted outside.
Screams.
Chaos. Someone was coming for them, and Jaden wasn't sure if they were friend or enemy. He had seconds to decide. Stay and demand answers, or run and find Lena before they erased whatever part of her was still human. Because now, the truth was finally clear. He wasn't the only one who'd been watching. And the real puppet master had just cut the strings. The gunfire outside was closing in fast, a staccato rhythm of chaos that made Jaden's heart pound like it was trying to escape his chest. The warehouse vibrated with panic, steel beams groaning, lights flickering as power surged and failed in erratic bursts. But Jaden didn't move. He stood frozen in the center of the storm, staring at the blank screen where Lena's image had just vanished. The truth burned in his brain now, too heavy to carry, too dangerous to let go. He turned to Marcus, who was fumbling with his secure keypad by the wall, his calm now replaced by frantic desperation. "Tell me where she is," Jaden demanded, voice low, deadly. Marcus didn't answer. Jaden stepped forward, grabbed him by the collar, slammed him against the steel wall. "You used me. You played me like a pawn in a game I didn't even know I was in." But Marcus wasn't looking at Jaden anymore. His eyes had locked on something behind him. Jaden turned just in time to see a figure step out from the shadows, slow and deliberate, dressed in black, face hidden behind a mask that looked more surgical than tactical. The person didn't speak. Instead, They raised a hand and placed a small data drive on the ground before vanishing as quickly as they appeared. Jaden rushed over, scooped it up, shoved it into a nearby terminal. The files inside weren't encrypted. They were meant to be found. Video logs, email chains, neural interface blueprints. Thousands of pages of data tracing the legacy directive back not just to government routes, but to private contractors, tech billionaires, and pharmaceutical giants. The plan had always been the same. Create programmable individuals through controlled trauma, manipulate identity through AI-assisted conditioning, and drop them into the real world like sleeper agents. What Lena had gone through, what Jaden had survived, it wasn't random. It was scripted, like a cruel social experiment on a national scale. Marcus laughed, soft and bitter. Now you get it. We're not the only ones. There are hundreds of you. Some don't even know they've been activated. And Lena? She was never meant to love you. That was the control variable. Jaden didn't care about the science anymore. All he knew was that Lena was somewhere out there, and he was running out of time. He forced Marcus to access the live tracking network, something only high-clearance agents could do. The map glitched, overloaded by firewalls, but eventually it zoomed in on a hidden facility beneath the old county courthouse, a location scrubbed from all public records. Jaden dragged Marcus with him, navigating burning streets, ducking black SUVs, and dodging patrol drones that now littered the skies. Everything was falling apart, the whole city a pressure cooker of secrets boiling over. They reached the courthouse just as the sunrise broke over the skyline, golden light slicing through the fog like a final warning. The underground facility was buried deep, 6 levels below, shielded by biometric locks that only Marcus could bypass. Once inside, the walls were sterile, white, humming with energy. Every step deeper felt like walking into a grave made of data and lies. Then they found her. Lena was strapped to a vertical platform, a ring of lights rotating around her head, her body twitching as pulses of information were shot into her neural cortex. Her eyes were wide open but vacant.
Blank.
Jaden shouted her name, but she didn't respond. That's when the voice came from the overhead speaker.
Calm. Cold.
Familiar. You've come so far, Jaden. But free will was never part of your design. It was his father. Jaden staggered back, throat dry. You died, he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. You were in the explosion. The voice laughed, hollow and mechanical. That was necessary. Your grief accelerated phase 2. Every step you took, every friend you made, we were guiding you. The final twist struck like a bolt of lightning. Jaden was never the rebel. He was the backup plan. The one who was supposed to reset the system if Lena failed. He hadn't broken out of the maze. He was the failsafe built into its walls. The experiment wasn't Lena. It was them together. A controlled scenario testing how deep emotional bonds could interfere with neural obedience. But something had gone wrong. Jaden did break the code. His attachment wasn't planned, it evolved. And that unpredictability was now threatening the entire program. As Lena began to scream, the lights on the platform surged. Her memories were being rewritten, overwritten, destroyed. Jaden had to make a choice: pull the plug and risk killing her, or let the procedure finish and lose her forever. Marcus tried to intervene, but Jaden punched him so hard he hit the floor and didn't get back up. He ran to the main terminal, fingers shaking, tears blurring his vision. He didn't know what he was doing, but his instincts kicked in. He bypassed protocol after protocol until the system gave in. With one final keystroke, he reset her neural cache. Everything went black. Silence. Then Lena gasped, collapsed into his arms, her eyes flooded with panic and memory. She remembered everything. Every test. Every lie. Every time they told her she was broken when she wasn't. Jaden held her tight, whispering, "You're not alone. Not anymore." But just as they reached the exit, a timer began counting down on the monitors. A failsafe. The entire facility rigged to detonate. No escape. That's when Lena did something Jaden never expected. She turned to him, smiled softly, and handed him a flash drive.
Take it. Get it to the press.
To the world. They have to know. He shook his head, refusing. But she pushed him out the door, sealed it from the inside. He screamed her name as the steel slammed shut. The explosion shook the city. Emergency services swarmed the wreckage for days, but no bodies were recovered. Just ash. Rumors spread fast about government labs, brainwashed teens, and data leaks that pointed fingers at the most powerful companies in America. Jaden disappeared off the grid, a ghost with a Ferrari and a past that no longer fit inside any system. But 1 week later, a message appeared on his phone. No ID, no trace, just a photo of Lena, smiling, and behind her a room filled with files. The legacy directive was never destroyed. It had only just begun. The days that followed were quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the city itself was holding its breath. Jaden spent them driving through forgotten towns and empty highways, the Ferrari a strange reminder of how far he'd come and how much he'd lost. Every mile on the odometer felt like a piece of his old life peeling away, revealing someone new underneath. The chaos, the manipulation, the betrayals, it had all cracked something open inside him, and now he couldn't go back to who he was. But more than the scars or the ghosts, it was Lena's absence that haunted him the most. He could still hear her voice in his head, still see that last smile as the doors closed between them. She'd made the choice to save him, to give him the chance to expose the truth, but it was a burden that weighed heavy on his soul. And yet, despite all odds, there was that single photo, the message that had no sender, no trace, no explanation. A glitch in the system, or a carefully planted clue. Jaden didn't know. He only knew one thing. She was alive. Somewhere. The flash drive she had given him became everything. He traveled across states, meeting with whistleblowers, investigative journalists, and rogue coders who had once been part of the same machine that had tried to erase them. At first, they laughed him off. Another kid with a story too wild to believe. But then they saw the files. The data logs, the neural blueprints, the black site records that tied together corporations, defense contractors, and clinical research institutions under one horrifying umbrella, the legacy directive. It wasn't just about programming behavior. It was about manufacturing identity, wiping clean anything inconvenient, and replacing it with carefully curated obedience. And they weren't just targeting the poor or vulnerable. This went as far as government interns, political aides, tech apprentices, anyone with potential influence who could be molded like clay. Jaden had lived it. Lena had survived it. But there were hundreds more who hadn't been so lucky. The news broke like wildfire. Mind control in America? Neural conditioning scandal shocks the nation. The legacy files. How far will power go? Mainstream media danced around the edges, afraid to go all in, but underground channels, trending YouTube creators, and whistleblower networks pushed it hard. Jaden stayed anonymous, only appearing in shadowed interviews and encrypted forums. But his story lit a fire. Former employees came forward. Victims began recognizing strange gaps in their memories. And public outrage forced the government to launch an official investigation, though most knew it would only scratch the surface. Still, it was a crack in the dam. The truth was out, and nothing could put it back in the bottle. But justice didn't come with handcuffs or courtrooms. Most of the people responsible had already disappeared, names erased, trails covered, assets relocated overseas. What the public got was a list of scapegoats and a long-winded apology. Jaden didn't care about that anymore. His focus was on something else. The pattern. Because every few weeks, he'd receive another message. No return address. No sender. Just an image. A location. A symbol. And each time, it led to a person who had once been corrected by the directive, engineers, students, even veterans. People with fractured memories and the same empty look he once saw in Lena's eyes. People who were waiting to be awakened. Jaden began helping them. Quietly. One by one. No headlines, no noise, just redemption. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about repair. Rebuilding what the world had broken. Making sure no one else had to go through what he and Lena had survived. As for Lena, he never stopped looking. Each image, each clue, brought him a little closer. Some said she was in Europe, hiding with other survivors. Others believed she was deep inside what remained of the directive, dismantling it from the inside. Jaden didn't know which version was true, but every time he opened a new message, saw another blurry glimpse of her silhouette in a reflection or crowd, he felt that same pull in his chest. She was still out there, still fighting, still winning. Years passed, and though the headlines faded, the ripple never stopped. The legacy directive became the subject of documentaries, conspiracy threads, college lectures, and political campaigns. It entered the collective consciousness, a haunting reminder of what unchecked power could do in the name of control. Jaden became a myth to some, a hero to others, but he never let it distract him. He wasn't looking for praise. He was looking for healing. Then, one morning, deep in a small Colorado town where the snow hadn't yet melted and the world moved just a little slower, Jaden walked into a quiet bookstore to avoid the cold. And there she was, standing by the psychology aisle, wearing a coat 2 sizes too big and sipping coffee from a cracked mug. No security detail. No disguise. Just her. Lena. They didn't say anything at first. Words weren't big enough for that moment. He walked up to her, and she smiled the same way she had the day they met behind the fast food counter, when the world was simpler and danger wore a quieter mask. She handed him a notebook. Inside were names.
Dozens of them.
Survivors. Locations.
Plans.
"I've been waiting," she said softly. Jaden nodded, the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights melting in an instant. He didn't know what would come next, whether they'd be hunted again, whether more secrets would rise, whether peace was even possible in a world that had blurred the line between mind and machine. But as they walked out together into the light snow, hand in hand, he knew one thing for sure. They had beaten the system once. And together, they'd do it again. The Ferrari sat quietly under a dusting of frost. Jaden looked back at the bookstore, then at the road ahead. A new story was waiting. And this time, they would write it on their own terms.